Hey everyone, welcome. I'm Naomi, and today your core muscles are in for a treat or an adventure, or maybe both. So today you are doing a core focused strength training practice, which means you are going to need hand weights. Now, I recommend having 2 different weights of different heaviness just to make sure that you have the appropriate weight for what you need for each exercise that we're going to do. Now, in addition to this being a strength training class, you are doing a very specific type of strength training class. You are going to do an AMRAP. Now, if you're not sure what an AMRAP is, let me explain. An AMRAP means as many reps as possible in a set period of time. Now, I really love AMRAPs because they are a fantastic way to push yourself. They're a great way to improve heart health and muscular endurance. Now, they're also really fantastic for getting an intense workout in a short period of time. And that's what we're after today, is a strong workout in a short period of time. So what you're doing today in this class is I'm going to give you a little heads up. I'm going to show each exercise before we get into the AMRAP. And then for 8 minutes, you're just going to go. Now, you can keep up with me as I do it, or you can move at your own pace. And I just want to give you a little notice about that so that you don't feel like you have to keep up with me and what I'm doing on the screen. You have 8 minutes to do each of these 3 exercises as many times as you can. So now that you know what you are headed for, gather your weights, get yourself ready. Let's go. And I'll see you on the other side. What we're doing, so you're going to take your weight, or if you have 2 weights in between your hands, press them straight up overhead. Okay, and this is what you would do if you were working with weights. You could also hold on to either end of your dumbbells. If you were holding dumbbells, if you're using one weight that's slightly heavier, you can do it that way too. So a couple of different ways to hold. I'm going to hold in the central bar for now. Okay, weight goes up. You're going to take it overhead. Try not to hit the block that you put in the wrong place, which was me. Goes overhead, dumbbells tap down or get close to, and come back up. Okay, tap down and come back up. Okay, tap down or come close to and come back up. Now, as I'm doing this, my knees are bent, right? So my knees are bent, feet are on the floor, and I'm aiming to keep my rib cage moving down, like glued to the floor the entire time, okay? So you could do that with your knees bent. You could do this with your legs straight, which increases the work for your shoulders as well as your core. You could also, last option, if you were feeling particularly motivated, you could lift your legs up, let them hover, weight goes overhead and back to center, okay? That one, I would say, is sort of a proceed with caution sort of thing, not because you're going to get hurt, but because it's a lot more work for your core. Okay, so if you're less familiar with pullovers, which is the exercise we're doing, start with your knees bent, rib cage glued to the floor. Next option, legs extended out, rib cage glued to the floor. Last option, legs up, arms overhead. Okay, so those are your pullovers. Next exercise is a seated or a press up. So weight starts at the center of your chest, push up and come back down. Okay, so the weight starts at the right at your chest, okay, right in line with your boobs. Okay, push towards your knees, up, and then pull back down towards your knees and back to your chest. Okay, up and down, up and down. Now this one you do with your knees bent. Okay, you do not want to like legs straight with this one. Ugh. You could, for sure. I find it excessively challenging and not necessarily in a necessary way. But you could certainly do this with your legs straight if you wanted a little bit more core challenge. I will be doing it with my knees bent. Okay, same idea with this one is that like you're aiming to curl up from your core, press overhead like those top to bottom or bottom to top squats and pull back down. Okay, last thing that you're going to do. Okay, so we're doing 3 exercises. Knees bent, and you rotate the weight from one side to the other. Okay? That's the last one. Yeah. your weight, your two weights, whatever you're working with, okay? Now, how many are you doing? Okay, before we get into this. For the pullovers, you're aiming for like a rep range of between 8 and 10. Okay, between 8 and 10. You might end up doing 6, you might end up doing 12, okay? But between 8 and 10. If you're working with lighter weights, the way to increase the challenge would be to extend your legs out or to lift them so that you are more working in that rep range, because that's going to challenge your arms too, okay? With the press ups, same thing. Rep range of between 8 and 10. You might do 6. You might do 12. To increase, if you're working with lighter weights, you could extend your legs and do the press up there, and that will certainly decrease your rep range, okay? Last one, side to side rotations with your knees bent. That one, you're just aiming for 1, 2, 3, 4 to 10, okay? That's the last one in the sequence. You're not aiming to like burn it out in that one. You're just going from one side to the other. Say that again. Yes. Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. That's what we're after. Okay. So if my phone was working, we would do this as an AMRAP, but my phone is not working. So we're just going to do the best that we can. Because I'm not a grown up and I don't have like a normal timer and I'm using an old busted phone. That's, you know, like I could at the very least like go to Walmart and get an egg timer, but no, I just have this old phone. Oh, it just turned on. Okay, cool. So it's like angry at me for like talking smack about it. I know. So we'll do an AMRAP. We're going to do an AMRAP of just 8. Checking my time, if that's right. Yeah, we'll do an AMRAP of 8 once this turns on. So you get a little bit more time before moving. I'll edit this in the video. Okay, so the way that an AMRAP works, if you've not done an AMRAP before, the way that an AMRAP works is it's as many reps as possible, right? Before you move on to the next one, okay? Part of the reason we're doing an AMRAP is that we're doing 3, but also because the second and third ones are not particularly strength-based, but more endurance-based, right? The first one is strength-based, the next 2 are endurance, but they're all focused on essentially the same part of your body, right? So the further you go into the AMRAP, the fewer reps you're gonna end up doing, most likely, okay? If you don't end up doing fewer reps, that's an indication that maybe you could go up in weight. But for now, let's go for it. Okay, so 8-minute AMRAP starts now, and we're starting with pullovers. Okay, so legs can be bent, legs straight or legs lifted, weight goes up, weight goes overhead, ribs stay glued to the floor as best they can, and back up. And remember, you're aiming for between 8 and 10 reps. With your knees bent, you have the most support with your legs straight, a little less, and with your legs lifted. It's crazy town abs, basically, which I am not prepared for today. So now when you've done as many reps as it feels appropriate to do, between 8 and 10 for your pullovers, the next thing you're doing are your presses, right? Your seated presses, so knees bent. Now, if you're still going, you can keep going. You don't have to do it when I'm doing it, but you're doing the seated presses, knees bent or legs extended. Weight goes to your knees and up, and you roll back down. Weight goes forward and up, and back to your chest. Again, aiming for between 8 and 10. And if you're like me and you're not counting, you want to go until you think that you have like one good one left in the tank, maybe two. I highly recommend counting though instead. That feels like a safer bet. Ugh. But when you're done with your overhead presses, then you're going to your seated rotations. And these are just 10. This one goes by pretty quickly. You could also with this one go to failure, but I think going to 10 is a little nicer. And that was my last one. After those, you're back down to your pullovers. And the idea in your pullovers is to keep your ribs planted. Your knees can be bent, your legs extended, or your legs lifted. I promise that within this AMRAP, I will demo each of those. And when you've done as many pullovers as it feels appropriate to do, the next thing you're heading to are your presses. Okay, so the weight starts at your chest. And again, if you are already there, awesome. If you are not there yet, that's awesome. You're pressing up, pulling back down, pressing up, weight goes to your chest, and back up again. Okay, from your chest, roll to your knees and up, and then from up to your knees, back to your thighs and to your chest. Aiming for between 8 and 10. And when you've done as many as it feels appropriate to do in your presses, you're going to your seated rotations, going for 10. Or to failure if that feels like a good idea for you. Okay, once you're done with those, because those are the quickest ones, you're back down for your pullovers. Okay, so knees can be bent, legs extended straight, or legs lifted. Ribs stay glued to the floor. The reason you want your ribs to stay glued to the floor is actually a little bit more about your shoulders than your core muscles. So it helps isolate the pulling action. Whereas if your ribs swing up every time you pull over, your ribs are doing the work instead of your shoulders. Remember, whenever you've done as many pullovers as it feels appropriate to do, you're moving on to your push presses. Okay, so the weight would come to your chest. You would push it towards your knees and up, and then all the way back down. Up, and all the way down. Remember, as you go through this AMRAP, you will find, very likely, because we are targeting pretty much the same area of your body, that you might not get as many reps as you did the first time or the second time. And when you've done as many reps as feels appropriate there, you've got your seated rotations. Aiming for 10. And then after your seated rotations, you're back down into your pullovers. And as always, the idea of AMRAPs is you're trying to fit in as many reps as possible, but if you need a break, please take a break. Legs are bent, extended straight or lifted. Ribs stay firmly rooted to the floor or as close as you can. Whew. It's about all I can do with my legs lifted at the end. After your pullovers, remember you've got your push presses. You've got about a minute left, a little over a minute. That might mean that you end without doing one of the exercises. That's okay. That's the whole point of the AMRAP. How many can you get in? Ooh. Ooh. And when you've done as many as it feels appropriate to do, between 8 and 10 reps or somewhere close, whew, then you've got your side-to-side rotations seated, aiming for 10. You've got 20 seconds left. So wherever you are, that might be pullovers, that might be rotations, it might be push presses. You're going until the bell rings. And that is it. That was the longest 8 minutes of my life. Woo, okay. Well, thank you for joining me for that incredible core-focused AMRAP. Huh. You might be tired. You might be completely worn out and exhausted. You might be winded. You might not be. You might be feeling like you could run a marathon now. I don't know. I don't want to put words in your mouth or feelings in your body, but I do hope that you had a good time. Because at the heart of all of this, for me at least, movement should be something that makes you feel good in your body. And so I hope that that gave you a good time. So thank you for being here. Thank you for working your core. Thank you for doing hard things. And as always, thank you for joining me on the mat. It is a privilege to be here in this space with you. I look forward to seeing you again. Until then, bye.